It was supposed to be just another Tuesday, until it wasn't. At 10 a.m., I sat in Declan's office, the man who had been my boss for 7 years, listening to him explain how budget cuts and restructuring were forcing him to let me go. 7 years of loyalty, of exceeding targets, of being the guy everyone could count on. It all meant nothing when the bottom line needed trimming. As he handed me the severance package, a cruel irony wrapped in corporate jargon, I felt like the floor beneath me had turned into quicksand. My identity as the provider, the stable one, crumbled right there in that sterile room. The drive home was a blur, my mind ricocheting between panic and an eerie calm. But then, disaster struck, or maybe it was fate giving me a preview of what was to come. Distracted by thoughts of how to break the news to Isabella, I rear-ended a parked car. The crunch of metal against metal snapped me back to reality, but the damage was done. My already aging sedan now had a busted bumper. A $600 repair bill loomed over me like a storm cloud, and I hadn't even told my wife yet. Instead of confronting the chaos head-on, I made a decision I thought would soften the blow. I stopped at Trader Joe's, bought ingredients for Isabella's favorite pasta dish, picked up a bottle of red wine, and grabbed a bouquet of lilies and hydrangeas. $65 I probably shouldn't have spent. I imagined us laughing over dinner, her comforting me, our family weathering this storm together. How naive I was. When Isabella walked in, her sharp eyes immediately zeroed in on the setup. She didn't say, "What's the occasion?" or "This is lovely." No, her first words cut deeper than any knife. "Something happened at work." Before I could respond, she snorted, grabbed the flowers from my hands, and threw them into the sink, water splashing everywhere. Then, in front of our daughter Catalina, she said, "See that? That's what a failure looks like." The air froze. Catalina's confused face burned into my memory as Isabella turned away, leaving me standing there, clutching the empty vase. It was the moment everything began to unravel. The neighborhood barbecue was supposed to be a casual gathering, but it turned into a spectacle I never wanted to star in. Isabella had been planning this for weeks, and now, with Declan, yes, the Declan who fired me, standing in our backyard like some twisted guest of honor, I realized just how calculated her moves had become. She greeted him with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen since our honeymoon, laughing too loudly at his jokes and casually touching his arm while introducing him as such an inspiring leader. Her words stung worse than any insult. Declan knows how to take care of his team and his family. Some people could learn from that. The neighbors shifted awkwardly, sensing the tension, but Isabella didn't care. She wasn't just humiliating me. She was rewriting our story in front of everyone. Later, during a lull in conversation, I overheard her telling Rhonda, her Pilates buddy, that stability is so important in a partner. You know, someone who can provide, not just emotionally, but financially too. Her eyes darted toward Declan as she said it, leaving no room for misinterpretation. My stomach churned as I pieced together what she'd been doing behind my back. That same morning, while she was out shopping, I discovered the truth. Isabella had secretly opened a credit card 6 months ago, racking up $22,000 in charges, designer bags, spa weekends, and even a just-in-case fund she'd confided to her sister Joanne about. Worse still, she'd quietly registered sole ownership of our house without my knowledge. Every move she made was a step toward securing her future, without me. As I stood there holding a plate of half-eaten burgers, watching her flirt with Declan under the guise of professionalism, I felt the weight of her betrayal settle over me like a suffocating blanket. This wasn't just about money or pride anymore. It was about survival. And in that moment, I knew I had to fight back, not just for myself, but for Catalina. The argument that shattered what little remained of our marriage happened on a cold, rainy Tuesday night. Isabella had been simmering with resentment all week, her words growing sharper with each passing day. That evening, after Catalina innocently asked if we'd still be able to afford her college fund, Isabella exploded. "If you can't earn enough money," she spat at me, her voice dripping with venom, "then you don't deserve to be Catalina's father." The room froze. Catalina's eyes widened in shock, and before I could respond, she bolted out the door, screaming that she wanted to live with her grandmother instead of us. The rain was relentless as Isabella and I ran outside, shouting for Catalina. We found her 3 blocks away, soaked to the bone, huddled under a bus stop shelter. Her small frame trembled, not just from the cold, but from fear and confusion. Isabella tried to approach her first, but Catalina flinched, yelling, "Why do you hate Dad so much? Why does everything have to be about money?" Then she turned to me, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "Does this mean you're leaving too?" My heart broke into pieces right there on the wet pavement. Back home, after wrapping Catalina in blankets and forcing her to drink hot cocoa, I retreated to my laptop while Isabella tucked her into bed. I needed answers, and I found them buried deep in our joint bank account. The savings we'd set aside for Catalina's education, the money Isabella promised would secure her future, was gone. Every penny drained, spent on designer handbags, spa weekends, and extravagant dinners I never attended. But it didn't stop there. Hidden among the transactions were payments to a lawyer, a divorce attorney. She wasn't just planning to leave. She was preparing to take everything. When Isabella walked into the living room later, her expression shifted from concern to defensiveness the moment she saw my laptop screen. "You went through our accounts?" she demanded, crossing her arms. "That's private." I stood up, shaking with rage. "Private? You think stealing your daughter's future is something you get to keep private?" Her face hardened. "Maybe if you hadn't lost your job, none of this would have happened." In that moment, I realized the truth. Isabella didn't see me as a partner or even a person, just a paycheck. And now, she was willing to destroy everything to protect herself. The day after Isabella's devastating comment about being a failure, I woke up with a clarity that felt both terrifying and liberating. The cracks in our marriage weren't just surface level, they were structural. But instead of crumbling under the weight of her words, I decided to rebuild on my own terms. Russell, my old friend from college, had been trying to get me to join his consulting business for years. "You've got the technical expertise," he'd always said, "and I've got the client base. Together, we could crush it." For the first time, I actually listened. While Isabella was out spending money we didn't have at Pilates classes and spa weekends, I was meeting secretly with Russell over Zoom calls. Every morning, I made sure she saw me scrolling through job listings on LinkedIn, but as soon as she left the house, I switched to drafting business plans. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was building something solid while pretending to look for jobs I had no intention of taking. By week 3, everything was set. We secured our first major contract, a 6-month project with steady pay, and finalized the partnership agreement. Then came the hardest part, securing my future without tipping off Isabella. I opened a separate bank account, transferred half of our joint savings, documenting every transaction, and leased a modest 2-bedroom apartment near Catalina's school. On the Friday Isabella announced she'd be taking Catalina to her sister Joanne's for the weekend, I executed my plan with military precision. Movers packed my essentials, leaving behind only what couldn't fit in the truck. I filed the divorce papers, included detailed custody arrangements favoring Catalina's well-being, and left a letter explaining why I was doing this. Not to abandon them, but to save us all from the toxicity that had consumed our home. Sunday evening, when Isabella returned, she found the papers on the kitchen table. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. Texts flooded my phone, anger, accusations, even threats. But by then, I was already settled into my new place, watching the sunset from a balcony that overlooked the city. The next morning, I launched our business announcement online. Within hours, Declan, my ex-boss, endorsed it publicly, calling me a talented professional who will undoubtedly succeed. Meanwhile, Isabella spiraled further, withdrawing $5,000 from our joint account in a last-ditch panic move. It didn't matter anymore. I'd built a foundation strong enough to withstand her chaos. By week 2 of my unemployment, Isabella's cruelty had evolved into something more calculated, a psychological demolition project disguised as tough love. Every comment was a dagger wrapped in silk, every suggestion laced with condescension. One evening, after Catalina went to bed, she summoned me to the living room for what she called a reality check. The air felt heavy, charged with tension, as if she'd been rehearsing this moment all day. "You need to lower your standards," she began, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "I mean, seriously, James, no one cares about your prestigious career anymore. You're not exactly in a position to be picky." She leaned back on the couch, crossing her legs like she was discussing the weather instead of dismantling what remained of my self-worth. Then came the kicker. Why don't you apply at Target? Rhonda's son just got promoted there. It's stable work. And let's face it, beggars can't be choosers. The irony hit me like a punch to the gut. This was the same woman who, just months earlier, insisted we renovate our perfectly functional kitchen because the cabinets were embarrassingly dated. Now, she was suggesting I abandon 7 years of professional expertise to stock shelves alongside teenagers. Her words weren't just dismissive, they were designed to humiliate, to strip away any shred of dignity I might still cling to. But she didn't stop there. As I sat there, stunned into silence, she launched into a monologue about how some people refuse to accept reality until it's too late. You've got bills piling up, a mortgage that won't pay itself, and a family depending on you. Or did you forget that part? She smirked, sipping her wine as though delivering a TED Talk on failure. If you can't bring in real money, maybe it's time to rethink your entire identity. Start small. Work your way up. Or better yet, let me handle things while you figure yourself out. Her tone shifted from mocking to outright cruel when she mentioned Declan again. You know, Declan said he could probably find space for someone entry-level if you're interested. Of course, it wouldn't pay much, but hey, it's something. The audacity of her suggestion made my blood boil. She wasn't offering help. She was rubbing salt into an open wound, using Declan, the man who fired me, as both carrot and stick. When I finally found my voice, I told her I'd rather sleep on the couch than listen to another word. But as I lay there that night, staring at the ceiling, her words echoed in my mind. It wasn't just about Target or Declan. It was about control. Isabella wanted to reduce me to nothing, to make me believe I deserved nothing. And in that moment, I realized she'd already started planning her exit strategy long before I lost my job. The morning Isabella and Catalina left for her sister's house, I felt a strange calm, the kind that comes before a storm. As their car disappeared down the driveway, I opened my laptop and executed the plan I'd been rehearsing in my mind for weeks. Every move was deliberate, precise, like a military operation. First, movers arrived to transport my essentials, clothes, books, and a few personal items. Then, I filed the divorce papers, leaving them neatly stacked on the kitchen table alongside printed evidence of Isabella's secret spending, her $22,000 loan, the designer bags, the spa weekends. It wasn't just paperwork, it was proof that I'd seen through her facade. Next, I transferred half of our joint savings into a new account I'd opened days earlier, documenting every transaction meticulously. By noon, I was sitting in my modest new apartment, staring at the blank walls and feeling an odd mix of emptiness and liberation. At 6:14 p.m., my phone buzzed, the first text from Isabella. "What is this?" she demanded, followed by a barrage of messages escalating from rage, "You coward," to desperation, "Please come back." By midnight, there were 47 messages, each one unraveling her carefully constructed mask. She threatened to take Catalina away, accused me of abandonment, and finally begged for forgiveness. Her words no longer carried weight. They were hollow echoes of someone clinging to control. But it was too late. The foundation she'd built on manipulation and deceit was crumbling. As I turned off my phone and lay back on the couch, I realized something profound. Freedom doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers in the quiet moments when you realize you're finally untethered. Isabella's attempts to win me back were as calculated as they were desperate. She began with tearful phone calls, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine regret. "I was wrong," she admitted during one late-night voicemail. "I should have stood by you. Can we start over?" But her words felt hollow, like a script she'd rehearsed in front of the mirror. Then came the social media spectacle, a flood of nostalgic photos from our early years together, each caption dripping with saccharine sentimentality. "Through thick and thin, I'll always support my husband." One post read, accompanied by a photo of us laughing at a beach vacation 5 years ago. The irony? That trip had ended with her berating me for forgetting sunscreen and ruining her Instagram aesthetic. Her newfound support extended beyond posts. She started showing up unannounced at my apartment, armed with takeout from my favorite Thai place or bottles of expensive wine. Once, she even left a bouquet of hydrangeas outside my door, a cruel echo of the flowers she'd thrown into the sink months earlier. But nothing about her behavior rang true. When Catalina mentioned that Isabella had been crying constantly and obsessively cleaning the house, It became clear this wasn't remorse. It was panic. She realized too late that her strategy to control me had backfired spectacularly. The turning point came when I noticed a comment thread under one of her posts. Half her friends praised her loyalty. The other half subtly questioned why she'd trashed me privately just weeks before. Reading those comments, I saw through her facade completely. This wasn't about love or reconciliation, it was damage control. And while Isabella played the victim on social media, I quietly built a life free from her manipulation. Her attempts to rewrite history only deepened the chasm between us. 6 months after the separation, my life had transformed in ways I never imagined. The 2-bedroom apartment that once felt too small now seemed like a fortress of freedom, a space where I could breathe without Isabella's judgmental gaze or her relentless pursuit of perfection. Russell and I were building something solid. Our business wasn't making us millionaires, but it provided stability and purpose. Every morning, I woke up to the quiet hum of possibility instead of the suffocating weight of failure. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again, not just a paycheck or a title, but a man with dreams and flaws. Dating re-entered my life cautiously, almost accidentally. A coworker introduced me to Sarah at an industry event, a freelance graphic designer with a laugh that could light up even the darkest corners of my past. We went for coffee twice, then dinner once. It wasn't serious, not yet. But for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where love wasn't transactional, where someone saw me as more than what I could provide. Still, every time my phone buzzed late at night, I knew it wasn't Sarah, it was Isabella. Her midnight texts came like clockwork. Remember when we danced under the stars? Or do you miss our vacations? Each message was a desperate attempt to rewrite history, to erase the pain she'd inflicted. I didn't respond. There was no point reopening wounds that were finally starting to heal. Meanwhile, Isabella's world unraveled further. She sold her luxury SUV, the one she'd insisted we needed to keep up appearances, and liquidated her designer wardrobe piece by piece on Poshmark. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same items she'd bought to impress others now funded her survival. When those funds ran out, she moved back in with her parents, trading her marble countertops for their worn Formica ones. Occasionally, she posted nostalgic photos on Instagram, tagging me in captions about second chances and forgiveness. But behind the filters and hashtags lay a woman grappling with consequences she'd never anticipated. Joanne confided in me during one of our rare conversations that Isabella missed workdays, spiraling into bouts of self-pity and regret. She thought losing you would make her stronger, Joanne admitted, but it broke her. Catalina, however, was the one who truly tugged at my heartstrings. Therapy sessions helped her process the chaos of our shattered family, but it was her journal entries that revealed how deeply Isabella's words had scarred her. One evening, while helping her bake cookies, a messy, flour-covered affair, I found her notebook open on the kitchen counter. Page after page detailed her fears, hopes, and realizations. "Dad doesn't need money to be good," she wrote. "He needs to be happy." Reading those words brought tears to my eyes, knowing she was beginning to see through the lies Isabella had planted about worth and success. As weeks turned into months, I realized this new chapter wasn't just about rebuilding my life. It was about teaching Catalina what truly mattered. At her 11th birthday party last weekend, held at a local park, Isabella pulled me aside. "I've changed," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Can't we try again?" I looked at her, beautiful, polished, yet fragile, and shook my head. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. That night, driving home with Catalina asleep in the passenger seat, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were ours. 6 months after the separation, during one of our rare encounters at Catalina's school play, Isabella approached me with an uncharacteristic vulnerability. "Can we try again?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I've changed, James." "Really?" Her eyes glistened with tears as she recounted how therapy had helped her confront her materialism and obsession with appearances. She even claimed that losing me had taught her what truly mattered: family, love, partnership. For a fleeting moment, I considered it, not because I believed her, but because the idea of closure felt tempting. But then I remembered the flowers in the sink, the cruel words spoken in front of our daughter, the secret loans and credit cards she'd used to build her facade of perfection. Beneath her polished exterior, Isabella hadn't fundamentally changed. She was still the same woman who valued status over substance, image over integrity. When I looked at her now, I didn't see regret. I saw desperation, a last-ditch attempt to salvage the life she thought she deserved. "The bridge has burned completely, Isabella," I said firmly. "Some things can't be rebuilt." That evening, I stopped by the florist where I'd bought those ill-fated lilies 6 months ago. This time, I chose a small bouquet of wildflowers, simple, genuine, imperfect. At home, I handed them to Catalina, who was sitting at the kitchen table drawing in her journal. "Sometimes people give flowers just to show love," I told her, "not because they want something or feel guilty." She smiled, placing them in a glass of water, a makeshift vase since we still hadn't bought one. In that moment, I realized the true lesson of this journey. Rebuilding isn't about restoring what was lost. It's about creating something new, something real. As Catalina hugged me tightly, I knew we'd both found a second chance, not with each other, but within ourselves.